welcome back to the Eras of Christ. I'm Pastor Paige.
And I'm Pastor Megan.
It's so good to be back with you guys today.
Yes.
We are on our 12th episode.
Yeah, and this is an episode unlike what we've done the last 10, because our very first episode was sort of our introduction of what we were going to do. So this is sort of the bookend of that.
It's a recap.
Yeah, it's our postscript.
I mean, this would be our Eras tour, right?
Yes. Our re-release?
Maybe. I don't know.
No, that's if we go back and redo the first season.
Which we had to do a time or two.
Yes. Yeah, we have learned that technology is a great thing when it's on our side.
Yes. So we wanted to just kind of chat with you all one last time for this season. And talk about what we've learned, how we've grown, some of our favorites, maybe some recurring themes that we saw, where we go from here.
Yeah, some things that we've been wanting to do, but are like, that needs to be its own episode.
Right.
And that fun stuff will come towards the end. So stick around for that.
So we have both learned a lot.
Yes.
About each other, about how to make podcasts.
The proper place to put your microphone to not get all the sounds. Not to wear your Apple Watch while you're doing it, because sometimes we like to hit our hand on the table.
Or problems with the Apple Watch as the starting to record.
Yes, or stopping to record during the middle of an episode and us not realizing it and finishing a whole episode and going, why is this 50-minute episode only 2 minutes?
Right. And microphones being charged.
Yes. Also, we recorded a whole episode. Why is there no sound?
I mean, there was one that perhaps we recorded 3 times. We're not going to tell you which one that was.
Yep.
And ended up, having to record it the next day.
Yeah, because by the time we were both ready, because as you know, we're pastors, so we have other things that are part of our jobs. And sometimes on Wednesday nights, we have activities that we have to go and do. And then by the time you're done with that activity, you're just like, my creative juices are done.
Right.
I can't do anything. We are not going to be proud of what we put out. So I bet if you can go back and look and see what episode was released on a different day, you will figure out what episode was recorded 3 different times.
3 different times. Or at least we did it 3 different times because they weren't recorded.
Correct. But, there's that thing with 3s,
I guess.
We just needed to do a trinity of one episode. And the episode it is just really hysterical that that's the episode it was.
Right. And, it's been also a journey in us, getting to know each other again after having not worked close together. And I have certainly appreciated your patience when we've had technology fails. Because my background is in electronic media production. So, friends, I do a lot of the production work, the post-production.
Which we are so thankful for.
And Megan does a lot of the pre-planning because she's way better at that than I am.
Yes, a lot of the graphics we do, the two of us, we've decided the color scheme for this season of what it's going to be. And, we're the ones that took the pictures together and all that sort of stuff. Because I think I knew how much work there was to do for a podcast. I don't think I really realized how much work there was to do before you hit record.
Right. Yeah. The pre-work. There's a lot to do to prep. And some of it is us listening to the albums.
Such a hard thing. It was such a hard task.
Some weeks it was harder than others.
The weeks I cheated and listened to the next week's albums. But,
it's interesting for you and I, the weeks that were harder to do that on than others were very different.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So mine were some of the early country albums. And yours were, my 2 favorites.
Folklore was really easy to listen to. Evermore, I think I was just in the headspace of I need something poppy every once in a while. So I did listen to Evermore just as much as I did everything else, but I had to throw in Midnight every once in a while.
Right.
But yeah, it greatly impacted my Apple Music Wrapped. I knew even back in the summer that Taylor was going to be really high on my list. I didn't expect her to be songs 1 through 15 on my top 20 songs. the next closest artist to minutes listened was like 6,000 and Taylor was at like 30.
That's crazy.
And I'm like, do I have a problem or did I just really remember how good her music is? And I'm going with the latter of that I rediscovered how good her music is. And like we've talked about in many episodes, I'm not ashamed to listen to her music anymore. I'm not. Yes, I will gladly wear a Swiftie sweatshirt out into public and have people look at me and say, Swiftie? And I'm like, yeah, deal. You can help me still, So it's been this whole like shift of, talking and speaking up for the things that I believe in this year. And, especially in these last 10 weeks, I feel that I've gotten much more comfortable talking about those things.
Well, and when I think back to the beginning of this process, when we started to plan this, so really for us, it's been probably 15 weeks of work, prepping and putting everything together. The way that you've become more comfortable and confident in, wait, no, this is a part of my work as a pastor, and my congregation members may not listen to Taylor Swift. They may not understand it, but it doesn't mean that I have to, hide it or keep it in secret or whatever.
Yeah. I was talking to 2 congregation members and I was like, oh yeah, tomorrow is podcast day. And the one person goes, podcast day? And I was like, yeah, Pastor Paige and I are doing a podcast together. What's it about? And I'm like, oh, that's right. I haven't shared with you guys what we're doing. And I was like, well, it's on Taylor Swift and Jesus. And they're like, wait, what? Tell us more. How can we listen to this? And just,
I love that
they were just so excited and just like, oh my God, that sounds amazing. And I'm like, yeah, it is pretty amazing. And they were like, so you just starting this? I'm like, actually, we're doing our last album.
Right.
So that was really exciting, and even people in the conference center who have been like, so what are you doing? Tell me more about this. This sounds so interesting. So that has been really fun throughout this, to just people that I think both of us sort of were like, we're not sure how it's going to be received. Yes, we know family and close friends will listen to it and they'll support us because we're very lucky to have people around us that will support us with anything. But then to have the people that are just like so excited for us and have been sharing on Facebook. So thank you to those of you that have shared on Facebook and made sure people know about this. That's just been such a huge, greatest blessing when you see the notifications on Facebook and you're like, someone shared our page, or we had 5 more views this week, that has just been a fun thing to experience.
And I think there's a real gift in being able to take something that, it's a cultural zeitgeist, right? Like Taylor was person of the year, right? For a reason.
Yeah.
And then to be able to use that to help us deepen our faith and I hope help you deepen your faith journey, or even, we've talked about some of our listeners are Taylor Swift fans, they're Swifties, and maybe they're hearing some of the Jesus stories for the first time, and others are learning about Taylor Swift, but about Jesus, right?
Yes.
So one of the things that we are doing, we have some gifts for you that we will have links in our show notes, is that we're making a couple Spotify playlists for you. And one of them is, these are the songs that we related to different stories of Christ. And there's another one that is, here are the places that we heard God in Taylor Swift's music. So perhaps those are, a devotional playlist of sorts for you.
And then there will even be the master playlist of all the songs we touched on, whether it was the God songs, the songs for our life verses for that album, or the Jesus songs. Because we just want to give you all of the songs that we talked about these last 10 weeks, because they're amazing songs.
Right.
And it was interesting as I was putting that master list together to sort of be like, wow, we had like 5 songs for debut And then by the time we got to Midnights, it looked like we put almost the whole playlist or like the whole list from the album. And it's like, no, we skipped maybe 4 or 5 songs.
Right.
But, because that's how this process has changed.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at our show notes from debut, you will see there's sort of a little scatter,
Mm-hmm.
just sort of how we think we were talking about things. And then the next episode, they got very organized.
Thank you.
You're welcome. That helped my type A brain.
Right.
To be able to go, okay, we're going to talk about this first and then this. We need to know about the eras, all that sort of stuff,
And laying out an outline of what each episode would look like and all of that.
Yes, and it helped to be able to have the stories that we were going to be talking about, and then also having the scripture linked right away. So if we wanted to mention this is, Luke,
whatever, yeah.
Or hey, this story actually appears in all 4 Gospels, and that's very unique. Or it's only in one Gospel, which is also very unique.
Yeah.
So that was, how we sort of evolved our show notes from the first time. So it'll be interesting to see how they evolve even more for next season.
So next season,
I think we should do some recapping before we spoil what we're gonna maybe do.
All right.
Keep them listening and watching.
Right. Keep you in suspense.
Yes.
So I think one of the things that we saw in this is what our favorite Jesus stories are. Because there are a handful of stories that we both consistently came back to over and over again. And I think
throughout multiple eras.
Right. And I think there's something about how those moments in Jesus' life really speak to us. And so, sort of an overarching theme was Holy Week.
Yeah.
We came back to that last week of Jesus' life in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
The farewell discourse is one that's in John.
Yes.
And is Jesus, I always describe it as the synoptic gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, tell us what happened, the details of the event for the Last Supper. But John gives us the conversation that they had at the meal. And the farewell discourse is that conversation and the things that Jesus said to reassure his followers, to prepare them. And it's there that he said important things like, they will know us by our love.
Yes.
So, and there was another Holy Week moment we came back to over and over again.
Yes. The garden. Specifically, the praying in the garden. The being left by himself in the garden. The soldiers coming and getting him in the garden. Just the garden in general was a huge theme in Speak Now, in Fearless, in Folklore and Evermore, in Midnights. Midnights was a huge theme. And I think it shows the importance of how not only that story, but all of these stories that we sort of will talk about span eras. And I think that also reflects with Taylor's writing, is that she has certain themes that we know she's always going to write, but they're going to grow and evolve or, just be touched on very quickly or go really in depth in what she's feeling in this era. And I think we see that in each one of the Gospels too, with how you were saying that, the synoptic Gospels, we get the timeline of events. These are the things that happened. But then John is like, no, here are the conversations that happened, the questions that were asked, all of the things. And I'm like, oh, so John's Folklore and Evermore.
Sort of.
The more of the stories that have happened in that time, because those to me seem like more conversational with the way she has the characters that are in there, So, the garden was a huge, and I think that's probably one of the ones that I would go back to. If I didn't know what album to put stuff on, I was like, let's find something in the garden.
Well, and I think the other piece of that is so much of what Taylor's writing about is heartbreak. Is disappointment, is the challenges of life, right? And I know for me, that moment of Jesus in the garden is one of the most vulnerable places of how we see Jesus in Scripture. And I think Taylor's writing all told, is vulnerable.
Yeah. It is very vulnerable.
And, we also come back to Jesus as a storyteller, right? You mentioned that. We talked a lot about parables when we talked about folklore. And we have other places where we talk about Jesus' ability to tell a story, which again is a way that they're similar, right? Like Jesus and Taylor have that in common. They're both great storytellers.
Yeah.
And use the stories to speak into the world, our needs as people, or how we're feeling.
Yeah.
And I think there's real power in that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. There's definitely the power in the way that he uses stories to tell us what's going on. Whether it's, the healing stories or the parables that he does or, the sermons that he gives, that's all in a way of how he tells stories.
Right.
And, it just makes it so much more relatable when you're able to find yourself in different parts of these stories.
Right. And, we called this the eras of Christ.
Yeah.
But Jesus wasn't always the main character.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
We talked a lot about the other people around Jesus. And probably no surprise to anyone who knows us.
Yes.
Or anyone who knows a female pastor.
Yeah.
We talked a lot about the women.
Yes. Yes. And in fact, as we were driving last weekend editing Midnights, I go, well, shouldn't there also be like the eras of women and we can do all of the women? And we're like, did we just come up with season 4? So spoiler, that's coming
in the future.
But know that the two of us were just like, oh, that's gotta be one.
That's it.
And which is just so much fun because that means this podcast is going to evolve to so many different things because we have the eras of Christ, but then we have eras of what's coming next, and then the eras of coming next, and then eras of the women, So, and then who knows what will be after that,
right?
Because that wasn't even on our radar when we first started this project, and it was just the fact that as we're listening to her music, as we're talking, and we're just like, we have talked about Mary Magdalene. We probably should have gone back and figured out how many times we actually mentioned her.
I'm going to guess we mentioned her in almost every episode.
I'm going to go with 9 out of 10 eras
that
we talked about Mary Magdalene.
And probably the one we didn't was debut, and we talked about Mary, the mother of Jesus.
Yes, so we still covered up Mary.
Right.
But Mary Magdalene was talked about a lot. And I think that shows the woman that she was to Jesus.
Right.
That she's in so many of these stories.
And her importance to women, right?
Yes.
I think the other reason we told the women's stories are not just because we relate to them and their stories that we like, but because so much of what Taylor Swift is doing in her writing, in her being, is lifting other women up.
Yeah.
And even looking at a song like Better Than Revenge, where she went and changed the lyrics.
Yeah.
Because she didn't like that she had slut shamed someone.
Yeah.
In the original version. And and I think there's real power in that, and seeing how she grew into no longer being competitive with other women.
Yeah. And how she realized, Beyonce came to the Eras tour movie premiere, and she then flew to London for the London premiere of the Beyonce movie. And just sort of like she's even said in her Time People of the Year interview that we're all women doing the same thing. Why does the public keep trying to pit us together?
Right.
Or against each other rather.
Well, I think the best mention of that in the with the release of the Renaissance film was actually Taylor's friend Blake Lively.
Yes.
Who said something about like Taylor and Beyonce being compared all summer. They both did huge stadium tours and
boosted economies whenever they were in the city.
Right. In every city they went to.
Yeah.
But Blake Lively kind of ended hers with, "We'll just wait till my album comes out."
Yes. Yeah.
Blake Lively is not a singer.
No, but Taylor and Beyonce both give you the, oh, I could do this. Or, they're showing you that women can support women.
Right.
And I think that's something that this podcast has given us a chance to support each other in new ways.
Right.
We had been apart for several years before we were brought back together when you were moved to the area. So, women supporting women, that's what I think 2023 has given us with the Barbie movie and Taylor and Beyonce. And so hopefully we can carry that into 2024 of how we can still be these dynamic women, but bring everybody else up with us as we go along.
Yeah. So there's another thing that happened as we were filming this. And, it turns out that today is Taylor Swift's birthday.
Yes, she's 34.
She's 34. And I think we talked last week about her Jesus year. I love that we did the eras of Christ during Taylor's Jesus year.
Yes.
And that we wrapped it up
on her birthday.
And honestly, we didn't plan it.
A little.
Not really. I mean, you went out and laid out when the things were going to fall. We didn't plan for 1989 to fall on that release.
That was just beautiful coincidence.
And we didn't plan on wrapping this up.
Yeah.
When we laid out our episodes.
Because I counted wrong.
Right.
I thought midnights was going to be today.
I mean, I think you also assumed maybe we'd take Thanksgiving week off, but we couldn't.
We couldn't because add one more thing to our plate.
Well, and it's time we get to hang out. We get to do things together,
which is such a hardship,
right? It's
for us to have to hang out together.
It's terrible.
Yes.
Yeah. So we talked about the women.
Yes.
A lot. All of the women: Mary and Martha, the Canaanite woman, the woman at the well. But we also talked about Jesus' friends.
Yeah, we did.
So you met both of our favorite disciples.
Yes.
So you met Mary Magdalene, as we've already mentioned.
Yes.
She's my favorite disciple. Come at me. Tell me she's not a disciple.
She is.
She is the apostle to the apostles. But yours, in addition to Mary, is Peter.
Yes. Peter. I love him so much because I see myself in him so much.
Yeah.
In the way that he questioned, in the way that he just needed to know the whys. Yes, he was so sure in his call. And it's sort of like his body and his brain were just like, huh, what?
Right.
After that moment of sort of like, I need to now question everything. Like, why are we calling these people? Do we really need them? But why do we need to do this? And no, I'm never going to betray you or deny you. I know who you are. I don't know that man.
Right.
And I'm like, oh, wow, look, college Megan.
Right.
I don't know who you're talking about.
Well, and I think,
so yes, Peter, there's a huge part of it also him being a fisherman. My dad's name was Peter. He was a fisherman. He asked a lot of questions, so there's a lot of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and we also talked about Judas.
We did. He came through several eras as well.
He did. And I think that speaks to Taylor processing the ways she's felt betrayed.
Yeah.
And, Judas as sort of being that image, the archetypal betrayer.
Yeah.
And so I think we got him a lot.
Yes.
And so while we're on this topic
of the disciples,
of the disciples and the people around Jesus, when I told a good friend of mine about what we were doing, he had said, oh my gosh, you should do a song for every disciple.
And challenge accepted.
Right. And so we've been thinking about this. We've mulled it over. And so we want to share with you our disciple tracks. So this is and we'll put this on a playlist as well on Spotify.
Yes.
But this is the playlist of the disciples and friends of Jesus.
Yes.
So
maybe your lesser known disciples.
Right. I mean, they're not named as among the 12, but they're important.
Yes.
Right.
Yes, so just as important.
Why don't we start with your favorite? What song does Peter
Long live. Yep. He's long live.
Why? Why do you think he's long live?
Oh goodness. We didn't go over this part of it. Just because he's through all the memories, he's through everything. He's with the good, he's with the bad. And he's now going to tell everybody about Jesus.
Yeah.
And, so long live is definitely Peter.
He was the first pope too, right?
Yeah.
So that's the other piece, that he helped sort of build the church in that way.
Yeah.
So then we have Peter's brother, Andrew.
Yes.
Andrew was among the first called, so we gave him New Romantics.
Yeah. So New Romantics is, the new way people are loving and all that sort of stuff. Yes.
Yeah.
Matthew, we have everything has changed because Matthew was a tax collector and tax collectors were looked down upon then because a lot of them were greedy and took more than they were supposed to. And everyone was sort of like, why are you calling him? And Jesus goes, Matthew.
Yeah.
Follow me. And Matthew handed over his keys, handed over all of his tax collector stuff, and went and followed Jesus. So everything has changed.
Yeah. Now, the next two we combined. So there are two brothers. They're called the sons of Zebedee.
Yes.
Or the sons of thunder.
Yes.
They're James and John. So together, now I'm a twin. I think I've shared this. I always hated when my sister and I got shared gifts. Yeah. But sorry, James and John, you're getting some shared songs. So the first is Because They Were the Sons of Thunder. You need to calm down.
Yes.
And the second is The Great War.
Yes.
And we gave them The Great War because the two of them have a debate over who is more important to Jesus.
So very much The Great War.
Yes.
Philip.
Oh, yeah. Philip. So Philip is one of the disciples who sees somebody with to share the food at the feeding of the 5,000.
Yes, he's the one that picks up the little boy and goes, here's this little boy that will help us feed, but he's only got, a couple loaves and some fish.
Right. And
so we said, I can see you.
Because he could see the little boy. I like it.
Yes.
The next one is maybe my favorite.
There are several ones. As we were doing this earlier, we were just like, who is that?
Right.
And then so Paige would have to go through and like read all of the history of what we have of that disciple. And then it was, some of them are very tongue in cheek of like, yep. And then some of them are just like blatant out funny.
Right.
Because.
So next up is Bartholomew.
I forgot that you existed. Because we sometimes forget that he is part of the 12.
Right. We do.
Yeah.
Okay, then Thomas. So Thomas is the doubter. He's the one who after Jesus' resurrection says, show me your hands.
Yeah, because he misses when Jesus comes the first time. And all the disciples are saying, oh my God, Jesus came back. And Thomas is like, okay.
No body, no crime.
So no body, no crime is Thomas's trap. Yep.
Yeah. Then there is a second James. He's often called James the Lesser, which is allegedly because he was either younger or shorter than the other James. James the Lesser.
Interesting. So we gave him Invisible from the first album.
Because
he's known as the other James or the lesser James. So Invisible.
Right. Then we have Thaddeus.
Yes.
And I
like disciple Thaddeus.
Right. Yep. There was Thaddeus. But he had another name, and now he was also Judas.
Yes, but Judas.
The other Judas.
Yes, the other Judas.
So we gave him I Wish You Would.
Yes.
Then we have Simon the Zealot, not Simon Peter.
Correct.
Right? Because Peter is Simon Peter. This is Simon the Zealot. So, and many people think he was either among the political party, the Zealots.
Yes.
Or he was just like deeply passionate and so excited. And we'd already given, you could calm down, to the sons of Zebedee. So he gets jump, then fall.
Which then leads us to our 12th disciple, Judas Iscariot. The one that betrays him, the one that has just been in so many eras, which means he gets several songs. Right. Because every time I think we mention this to people and we mentioned, oh yeah, we're going to do disciple tracks and we're going to do them for Judas. And they're like, did you include this? And we're like, you're going to have to wait and see.
Right.
But thank you for that suggestion because it was brilliant.
Right. So he's got a few.
Yes.
Right? So first, look what you made me do.
This is why we can't have nice things.
We are never, ever getting back together.
And bad blood.
I mean, Judas is, frankly, he's such an important character.
Yes.
Yes, the other 11 are very important. And,
yes.
And it is miraculous that Jesus, a 33-year-old man, had 12 good friends. But Judas, because he's the one that hurt Jesus, becomes so important, and is so related to what inspires Taylor to write. So
yes, yeah. So Judas gets a whole bunch,
right?
But then we have the friends that we talked about a lot. But then we also think that some of these people were with him throughout. But probably one of the first ones that I was very excited about was Nicodemus.
Right, and you gave him a song last week.
I did give him a song.
He gets to keep it.
So he gets to keep it. Question, because he came in the middle of the night to ask Jesus questions. So.
Then Mary Magdalene, and you may remember a few weeks ago we introduced you to the Gospel of Mary. And so some of what she says there, but also just because of who she was, she gets the man.
Yes. And then we have Martha, and she gets tolerated.
Which I think is great, because Jesus just tolerated her buzzing around.
Yes, and her setting out the fancy stuff.
Right.
To be able to set the table for Jesus and all of the guys.
Yeah. And then we have her sister who sat at Jesus' feet, this Mary. She gets when Emma falls in love, because when Emma falls in love, that's all she focuses on, right?
And the whole world changes.
Yeah. Yep.
So then we have Mother Mary, and immediately when Paige was like, okay, Mother Mary, and I'm like, bigger than the whole sky.
Yeah.
Because her love for her son is bigger than anything.
Right. Absolutely. Well, so then if we're going to do Mother Mary, we need to do his earthly father.
Yes, his earthly father. And Paige, you're the one that suggested this song that I thought was brilliant.
So Joseph, the, Jesus' earthly father. Now, I'm going to add something that isn't on our list. I know.
Okay.
But remember, Joseph is a dreamer.
Oh, he is. Yes.
Like the other Joseph in Genesis, also a dreamer. Probably we'll talk about that later. So maybe wildest dreams.
Ooh, yes. But because he had some wild dreams.
And
probably didn't want to sleep multiple times. Yeah.
But the song that is actually his, it should have said no.
But should he have?
Well, I mean, he thinks Mary should have said no.
She couldn't have. Yeah. She probably could have.
She could have.
But
she could have.
Yes.
But that's a conversation for another time, I'm sure.
Probably when we get to the women, the eras of the women.
Right? So then this man, we haven't, I don't think, mentioned yet. He was called a secret disciple.
Yes.
His name is Joseph of Arimathea. He is mentioned in John's gospel and gives Jesus his tomb for where Jesus' body will rest.
Yes. And he comes alongside Nicodemus when Nicodemus comes back in the night once again to remove Jesus from the cross and to place him in Joseph's of Arimathea's tomb, which is why we give him, Joseph of Arimathea, daylight.
Yep. And then we can't leave out the first evangelist, the woman at the well.
Yes.
And this, I think you picked right from the beginning. So what song does the woman at the well get?
Enchanted, because she was enchanted to meet Jesus, and Jesus was enchanted to meet her.
It's awesome.
So it's one of my favorite stories in the Bible. It's one of my favorite moments of Jesus just sort of defying society's expectations and showing how he can rewrite the book.
Right.
And in this one moment when he's talking to the Samaritan woman, the woman at the well, he rewrites everything.
Yeah.
And it's just such a beautiful thing. So I think we would have to say it's Enchanted, Taylor's version.
Yes. Oh, and the Canaanite woman gets better man.
Yes.
So we're going to slide that one in.
Yes.
The Canaanite woman, or the Syrophoenician woman, as she's called.
Because we've called her both things on the podcast.
Right.
We talked about her with both names.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, better man. Like she gets that one. So while we're talking about favorites,
Yes. Yes.
We found a great, really fun tool that has you rank and compare your favorite albums, your favorite songs of Taylor Swift's. So we each did this.
We spent a lot of time last week doing this. We will put the link in the show notes because the two of us, Paige started hers just a little bit before me. And every once in a while I'd hear, what do you mean they put these two songs together?
How am I supposed to pick?
How can I choose between blah, blah, blah and blah, blah, blah? You know, so it was very difficult to choose your ranking for your songs. And then I think, you know, I had picked what I thought my top 10 albums were. When we finished this last week, the week before, I was like, okay, this is how I think I would rank them. And then when I did it, it was pretty close to what my things were. And then I also did the top 5, the top ranks for the track 5s, which was also very interesting.
Didn't do the track 5s. Okay. I mean, I spent a lot of time on the songs.
We both did.
So, well, let's do the albums. What was your favorite album?
So I thought it was going to be 1989. But I am not surprised by what it is because 1989 and this one are probably real close. So my number 1 album is Speak Now. And I would fully support this. This album, I think I was so excited for the re-release of it. Because it has some of my favorite songs on it.
Right.
And so this is number 1 for me. Followed by 1989, Lover, Fearless, Midnight, Folklore, Evermore, Reputation, Red, and Debut. And those might change when the re-releases come out for Reputation and Debut.
That's true. Yeah. That's true. And, you know, I think that my favorite will come as no surprise to anyone.
No.
It wasn't a surprise to me. And in fact, my top 4, I predicted almost exactly.
Yes, you did.
So my number 1 is Folklore.
Color me surprised.
I know we can't color it. It's a black and white album.
Yes.
I mean, obviously, you guys know this. You heard me talk about it. I mean,
our first episode, you talked about it.
Yeah.
Which is why I thought it would be 1989 for mine, because that's where my life verse is from.
Right. That's true.
Yeah.
So first Folklore, second Evermore. It's twin. And now these two, I think I would have guessed the other way, but it makes sense, is Midnights and then Reputation. And thank you, Genevieve, for introducing me to Reputation, because it really has become one of my favorites, obviously. So then number 5 is 1989, then Lover, then Red, Speak Now, Fearless, and Taylor Swift.
Yeah.
So you'll notice the country albums are my bottom 3. But if you made me compare these other things, you know, I think she still gets a pretty good ranking.
Yes. Yes.
So then our favorite songs, that was really interesting. Because
it was very interesting.
I wasn't sure what it would be for me.
Yeah. I figured my one that's the top 1 would be within the top 5. But as I'm looking at them now, and it's interesting because they will give you like a tie. Like if you had a tie for this number.
And I did have a tie.
I had my first several ties. So my first song, I think, is very appropriate because it's also my life verse song from that very first episode where we introduced you all to our life verses, is You Are in Love. And I just still love that song so much. And hearing the re-release of it on 1989, I think made me fall in love with that song even more, because you know she's grown up since she recorded it, and she's experienced love. We think and loss, and you know, and then Exile, 7, Enchanted, The Best Day, 15, Never Grew Up. Those were all tied, and then You Belong With Me, Marjorie, and Evermore. I think that also means I need to start listening to Bon Iver. Because 2 of the songs on there feature Bon Iver.
But also, I think that you ranked Folklore too low.
I probably did.
Because, a couple of folklores are in your top 10.
Yes. Yeah. So, and I think folklore is one that could probably switch.
Right.
Like I think it's really close to midnight.
Okay.
So
depends on your mood.
I think it depends on my mood and also, what's going on. Like, do I need more of the singer-songwriter or do I need the pop dance in the kitchen?
Right. Yeah.
It's hard to dance to folklore if I don't have an orange ball for
come
Willow.
On. You can dance to anything.
You can. That's true.
You can dance to anything.
Yes.
So I had a tie for my first.
Yes, you did.
And I think if you've listened, it's not going to be a shock.
Mm-hmm.
But Mirror Ball and New Year's Day.
Mm-hmm.
And New Year's Day is on Reputation. It was one that when I heard it, I went, oh. Mm-hmm. It just speaks so, I don't know, it's beautiful. And same with Mirror Ball. But then we get Champagne Problems. The Last Great American Dynasty, because that's just a great song. Mad Woman.
Yep.
Then The Man. Then Back to December. Mm-hmm. Then 'Tis the Darn Season.
Yeah.
Illicit Affairs. And This Is Me Trying.
Tell me your two favorite albums are not greatly influenced by your top 10 songs.
I mean, maybe a little.
Yeah. I mean, I have a lot of 1989 and Speak Now on mine.
That's true. That's true.
So
I think, and it was, like I said, I wasn't exactly sure how it was going to come out.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. It's very interesting how the person that put it together, I don't know how they figured out how to put songs together.
Well, I think that in the end, they end up matching every single song. You compare every one song to every song until you get it's clear.
Yeah.
So there was some clarity, with mine. I think I only did some number of pairs, but there are more pairs that you can end up doing.
Yeah.
So, but it was just a really neat process.
It was very interesting to see how it ended up, and they update it with every new re-release or new album that comes out. So, when we get Reputation, Taylor's version, and debut Taylor's version, that will change.
Yeah.
When we get the elusive 11th album, that will change,
right.
So.
Or the triplet to Folklore and Evermore. Who knows what's coming?
Who knows where that album is?
Right. Oh my goodness. Well, what's interesting though is, your Life Verse song was your number one.
Yes.
You ranked my Life Verse song higher than I did.
Really?
Mine was like 13, 15. It was in my top 20 for sure. But Marjorie didn't quite get into my top 10. And I don't think it has, for me, it doesn't have anything to do with the Life Verse piece. I think that it's sort of the whole mess of some of these other songs.
Yeah. Yeah.
So speaking of Life Verses, now that we've re-listened to the whole thing, would you stick with your original Life Verse?
It's song 15 verses 45 and 46, which I believe are her talking about writing love songs. And this is why I spent my whole life writing love songs. I think that's it. Please don't quote me on it. Go back and look at my Instagram post with it to be sure. But yeah, I think I would still pick that as my thing. Yeah. Because that is still the love I'm searching for, is the love that's written about in stories. But not just in the 1989 version, in all of Taylor's.
Right.
Because
do you want the You're Losing Me love?
No. But like, there's so many ways she describes love. And I think that's one of the things I love about her writing is that you have the, puppy dog first love, the isn't he just wonderful? Like rosy and sunshiny and your cheeks just hurt because you're smiling all the time. But then you have the love that's complex and full of all the ups and downs of life. And then you have the love that changes you.
Right.
The love that makes you better. And yeah, in a way, You're Losing Me, I think, is her way of saying, I've changed, we don't work together anymore. You're not fighting for me anymore. You know, so I want the opposite of that. I want the love where the guy is going to fight for me, is going to fight for us, is going to make our relationship a priority.
Right.
You know? So yeah, I'm still the hopeless romantic I was 12 episodes ago. Are we surprised?
No.
Family's going, no.
No.
Christine's going, no. Lauren's going, no. Like, but, and I think it's because I see some of my best friends with that. That is what my parents had. It's what my grandparents had. You know, I was blessed to have amazing examples of this all-consuming, challenging, life-altering love. So, yeah, I'm sticking with it.
You're sticking with it.
I'm sticking with it.
All right.
What about you, Paige?
So I picked Marjorie. You know, and I've got my power, polite, never be so polite that you forget your power, and never wield such power that you forget to be polite.
Yeah.
And I keep it, but I add to it.
Okay.
So, and I think this is because of our experience at the movie. So if we shared that we saw the movie together, and that it was on the 10th anniversary of losing my mom.
Yeah.
And as we listened to Marjorie, I wasn't expecting it, but there were.
I was not expecting it either.
All the cheers. And it was the first line that put me there. And the never be so kind that you forget to be clever, and never be so clever that you forget to be kind. Because that was my mom.
Yeah.
She was kind, but she was witty. She was funny.
Yeah.
And so I think for that, I would just do both of them with it, because I still think it's an important lesson.
Yes.
But there's probably some stuff from Lover I would pull out too.
Yeah. Because I posed this question to Paige as we were prepping for this episode, and I was like, what if we talked about what our life, like, is our life verse still the same? Just like, did you change yours? I was like, no, but I think I would also add every other song that we've talked about that we've picked as our life verse, because we have learned so much about ourselves in this process. We were talking about how I've processed a lot of grief, whether it be friends or family throughout this. Was not expecting that as we first started this. You know, but also celebrating the people in our lives that have been with us through the hard times and the good times, and have celebrated us and have helped us live long, you know? So yeah, this whole process, I think we talked about it. I was a little hesitant when we first started this of how it was going to look and how it was going to turn out. But this, as I've told many people, has been the greatest joy.
It has been
every
so
week
fun.
Of, you know, I'm like, Tuesday's my first day of the week because I take Monday as my Sabbath. So Tuesday's always just like, but then it's like, but I get to hang out with Paige on Wednesday. And we get to do things together, and we get to sit in the coffee shop, and then we're going to sit and plan Taylor, and we're going to talk about Jesus and Taylor, two things that we're like obsessed with and just love. And if you would have told me back in July, like when Paige moved down here, that we were going to spend 12 weeks talking about Taylor Swift and Jesus Christ, I would have been like, we're going to do what? And we're going to say it's work and it's ministry and you're going to be excited about it. And I would have been like, you're crazy.
Well, and it's so funny because I've been mulling this idea of the eras of Christ for months. And trying to figure out how it fit, where it fit. And we were hanging out, and I saw that you had Taylor Swift albums. And I went, are you a Taylor Swift fan? And then it was a couple weeks later, you were going into a program I did last year. And I looked at, actually, my boyfriend and I had been talking about it. And I looked at him, I said, it's a podcast. And it's with Megan. I have to tell her. And I sent her a text, and here we are. So all of these weeks later, it's been so fun, and we don't want it to end.
We don't. So guess what? It's not.
It's not going to.
We're going to take a short little break because, as we mention every episode, we are pastors, and we are in one of the two really busy seasons of the church. We are in the midst of Advent. In just 11 days is Christmas. Paige and I might have to write several sermons between now and then and finish planning worship. So the podcast is going to take a pause.
We are.
There might be some surprises sprinkled in the next couple of weeks. Mm-hmm. The new season will start in the new year.
Yes. And we're going to keep looking at the eras, album by album, but we are going to look in a different parts of Scripture.
Insert drum roll really badly here.
Right. For the eras of God.
Yes.
And looking at how God's relationship with humanity and how humanity's relationship with God has grown and shifted and evolved over time. So I'm so excited to dive into that.
Which means we're going to be looking at a whole new part of the Bible as well. So that means we get the Old Testament or the Hebrew Bible and the New Testament to sort of explore and not just be limited to 4 books.
Right.
Which will be amazing.
This will be so fun.
Because there have definitely been times where it's like, oh, we can't use that story yet. Oh, we can't use that story yet. Because it fits in something else. Right. So the eras of God will be coming in January.
Yeah, and we'll have a 3rd season that we're planning out. And as Megan mentioned, we'll look at the women in a 4th season.
Yes.
So we are so excited to keep doing this with you. I'm not sure our families are excited for us to continue to obsessively listen to Taylor. Sorry, not sorry.
Mom and Auntie have gotten used to it. Auntie will get in the car and she'll see that we're listening to a specific album. She goes, "Oh, is that the album you guys are talking about next week?" And I'm like, "Yes, it is in fact."
It's true.
We're starting to pick up those things, but we might have a surprise for next week.
Yeah, we'll see how the week goes. Depends on how much we both get written.
Yes.
And again, this has just been a joy and a pleasure to be on this journey together and with you. And because we're continuing, please continue to tell people about this, that maybe they can find their way into a healthier faith or a space of hope and love because of Taylor Swift, of all people.
Yes. And make sure you continue to follow us along on our social medias, on Facebook and Instagram, because I know we'll be posting things throughout. And continue to listen to us on wherever you find your podcasts, on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, Google Playlists, Podbean, or you can sit and watch us, Hi Auntie, on YouTube.
Yeah.
Show notes, as always, are on our website, pastorswifties.com. You can leave comments there. You can send us messages. What did you like this season? What didn't you like this season? What do you wish we talked more about? Do you like how we put songs with certain stories? Did you not like how we put songs with certain stories? Help us build season 2.
Right. And again, are there stories we missed?
Yes.
But I also want to remind you to follow us on Facebook and Instagram. When the playlists are done, we'll link to them there, but we'll link to them on our website and in the show notes as we're able to. So we invite you to listen to the playlists in the meantime.
Yes.
And we are so excited to come back in 2024 with the eras of God.
Yes. So, Paige, will you lead us in one last P.S. prayer?
Yes. Here's a prayer from your Pastor Swifties. Friends, may you live long, know your place in this world. May you turn to God in midnights and mornings. May you know the love that God has for you, whether you have champagne problems or you are a mad woman. May you know that love. May you feel that love. May you share that love. God, we give you thanks for all that you've given us, including your son, Jesus, and your daughter, Taylor Swift. Amen.
Go in peace. Take the daylight with you wherever you go. Make sure you have love in your heart and for all of God's people. Bye.
Bye.